It's not every day you get to interview the CEO of one of the best undeveloped gold mining projects globally, with the caveat of it not being within a major company. Obviously, this is one of those unicorn projects that I think many commentators in the industry say that there aren't many of these left, and obviously you've got one of them, with the hope of finding some more potentially. Graham, why don't we just welcome back to start with? You've just released your quarterly. What have you achieved so far over the Q3 period?
Yeah, and look, it's great to be back, and thanks for the invite. Look, it's been it's been a busy year for Rupert. Obviously, I came in at the end of last year. We were straight into launching the pre-feasibility study in February. As you said, that outlines a world-class gold project. Part of my role coming in, or the better part of my role coming in, is really about setting the business up, taking it to cash flow. So that's been a lot of the focus of the work over this year, and certainly Q3. And happy to dive into the various work streams that we've been on.
Good, yeah, because this is basically coming up to a year now since you joined the company,
Yes.
right? I think it was around last October, last November.
Yeah,
wasn't
well, it was October 14th, so
Yeah.
it's just over a year.
Okay.
Year and 2 weeks, but it's been a very exciting year, and a lot more to go. So really enjoyed it.
Okay, and what would you say? So in this last year, obviously you released the pre-fees, obviously around February time. Since then, talk us about the work streams, because obviously you're now working on the feasibility study, but within that you've got permitting, you've got other things that you are working on in parallel.
Yeah.
What does the work stream look like at the moment that you're really focusing on?
Yeah. So I guess the core work stream for us around the Ikkari project, and I would make the point that it's not just Ikkari, it's the central Lapland Greenstone belt that we're in, but the Ikkari project is really, permitting is the critical path for us. We are in a European country, very high set of standards. We want to demonstrate that we are the best stewards of the environment, that we are the people that can be absolutely trusted to deliver that social and economic value with the long-term environmental stewardship in mind. So that is kind of core to what we're doing. Then obviously there's the technical work to support that, the leadership around delivering that work, and then the exploration strategy, which is, we are still big believers in that belt in terms of it's very early days. You've got, Kittila up the road, that, the first resource I think was like 2008-9, Ikkari discovered in 2020, so just over 5 years ago, and some other smaller deposits in the region. But we still think that there's there's a 10 million ounce kind of camp there to be found. So those elements, progressing the environmental and permitting work, progressing the technical work for moving towards a feasibility study, the leadership to support that, and exploration. That's really the core elements of our strategy.
Okay, before we go in, just in case there are some people watching this that they've heard me call it a unicorn, and we're talking about how great this deposit is, maybe we should actually just remind people of the characteristics of the mineralization, the grade, the size, everything.
Yeah,
just so
we
people
should
get in their head what we're looking
we
at.
should. So Ikkari deposit, 4 million ounces in resource, 3.5 million of that converted into reserve, which is a phenomenal conversion rate. Over the first 250 meters, you've got that plus 10,000 ounces per vertical meter. You've got and that's over a 700 meter strike length. We're not talking about a 5 kilometer strike length or something. We're talking about something that is
big cohesive blob of gold. Basically.
Yes, yeah, and it's continuous grade.
Yeah.
The more we've drilled it, the more consistent that it's got. It does get tighter and a bit narrower as you go deeper. One thing we don't know is where the top of Ikkari has gone. It's at its widest point almost at the bedrock surface. So, but it is a phenomenal deposit. We're at the moment in the PFS, we've got a 10-year open pit mine that drives a lot of the value. We've got a 10-year underground mine on the back of that. There's opportunities to optimize that still. And the funny thing is, because it's so good, that's not even our priority. Our priority, as I said, is really about the environment and the permitting and showing that we are the right stewards. So there's so much opportunity in that belt. It's still an exciting place to be. 220,000 ounces a year plus in the first 10 years without any optimization. At current consensus gold price, you're talking about over $3 billion worth of NPV. You're talking about a serious cash generating asset. We would call it a company maker, and we see it as getting that to cash flow. We see that as demonstrating that Rupert is the trustworthy business to do that. And we see that as the opportunity to do that more and more across Finland, Nordics, and then maybe beyond.
You had a really big share price appreciation a few years back when you obviously made the discovery. The way I look at the story at the moment, obviously you're, like I said, it's a company maker. It's something that it's such a low cost asset in terms of when it's in production. You'd say anyone in the business would love to own this asset purely because it's just going to print money, quite literally money. Gold is money.
Yeah.
But it's going to print it at a very low cost compared to most peers in the industry. You haven't really had that. Obviously, we've seen a lot of people re-rate with the gold price massively. We haven't really seen that with Rupert.
Sure.
Are you worried that we're going to see some potential bids come in, given that you say it's the majors, for example, like the Agnicos, the Barricks, the B2 Golds, or whoever, they've all re-rated massively, and they usually are because they're the majors, and obviously they've got all the cash flow and whatnot. Are you in a somewhat vulnerable position that you could get taken out soon?
Well, what I would say, I agree with you. Our share price hasn't re-rated to the extent some others have. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is people are, they're aware that we're in a European country. They're aware that there are high standards to be met. For me, I think that's a great thing. That's a demonstration thing to show, the socio-economic impact that mining has. I'm a product of that in my own, my own upbringing. So I see that as massive opportunity, but for some people it's a bit of a question mark. It was only discovered 5 years ago. There was that big excitement about the run up in the resource. Now it's kind of, dare I say, for the outside world, the slightly boring stuff. I find it interesting and exciting, but the slightly boring stuff of, doing the environmental permitting work, doing the baseline studies, understanding the impacts, how are you going to mitigate those? That's not the sexiest stuff to talk about.
Well, you've done a lot of the sexy stuff. Yeah. You've released the best drill results that the industry have seen for many years.
Exactly.
And now you're sort of past that. Like you said, you've done the reserve. It's all cohesive. And yeah, like you said, you're doing the boring stuff now. I guess in terms of the boring stuff.
Yeah.
You were talking about there's different. What's the most important thing in Finland and in the EU that really the regulators are really going to be focused? Is it the water side of thing? Is it the emission side of it? How are you looking at it?
Well, so the way I characterize it, and even talking, conferences, investor meetings, etc., I say it's a waste and water project with a $3 billion gold byproduct.
Right.
And effectively, we're talking about Lapland, we're talking about a swamp. But all of these things are, very manageable. You counter that with, fantastic infrastructure. We're within 4 kilometres of a state highway, within 10 kilometres of a major power line. You've got renewable power. All the power in that region is, river hydro, nuclear in Finland, low power costs. So all of those things. It's really just about getting through that work, showing the authorities and the community, importantly, having that local engagement to show that we're going to do this properly. So starting with that approach, I think is, and doing everything we can to de-risk that as we go through.
What is it like with the community? Because obviously from the surface, you look at the map and the boundaries and whatnot. You've got, like you say, you've got Agnico with Kitzler, you've got Agnico Eagle, you've got Boliden. Agnico Eagle, Boliden, and then you've also got Anglo American with a project there. There's a lot of investment from other companies into the region. It looks on the surface that this is a well-run mining camp, and people obviously rely on that for their income and and whatnot. It seems like you shouldn't have too many issues on the social side.
No, I think that's very much right. I mean, I was up in Finland last week. We had the FEM conference up there. All of those companies, well represented there, and some very nice feedback from about the work that Rupert is doing as well. So there is a mining community in that region. Certainly in Sedankula, we have a small base in Sedankula. Kevitsa is run out of there. Kittilä is 100 kilometres away by road. So Sakati project is the local aspects are run out of Sedankula. So it's a mining friendly community. Where Ikkari is located, it's kind of halfway between the town of Sedankula and the town of Kittilä. It's a low value region in terms of there's no houses nearby, there's no people living within kind of 3 or 4 kilometers of the site. There's no high forestry values. We were up there in August with the representatives of Metsähallitus, the forestry authority. They're very happy to see the development because there's landowner rents and things to be paid. So it's in general, the local community is very supportive, and then it's about moving, and our team has done a fantastic job. The local team, very engaged in the local community and have done a fantastic job with that. And we all know that any mining project, whether it's in Western Australia, West Africa, Canada, without that local support, it's very hard to be successful. So, that the team's done a fantastic job with that. Where we're at now, we're sort of going to the next level in terms of the region understand the socio-economic benefits, the job creation, the economic benefits of the mine itself, and going and starting to have some of those conversations as we move through the development pipeline.
And I guess you mentioned earlier that you're looking at it more as a water and waste management project with a gold byproduct. Waste and water management, obviously, clearly two of the most important aspects of building any mine nowadays.
Yes.
Especially on the water side as well. If it does, from what I understand, in Finland, water is a massive issue, not issue, but a massive aspect of any permit. They really want to make sure that any water that's coming out of the mine is just as clean or cleaner, right?
It's very sensitive. Finland is called the nation of 1,000 lakes. Yeah. That is a massive underestimate. That there's 1,000 lakes in within 100 kilometers of Ikkari. It's low-lying, it's glacial moraine, that there are creeks, rivers, lakes in the region. So that's an important resource for the country, and that is something that needs to be well respected. Some of the permits, so the solution of choice, if you like, for mine and I should say water positive, obviously, with the level of snowfall. You've got a positive water balance. So you're going to need to discharge water from the site. So you need to treat that water. It's going to go into waterways, so it's got to be very high standard. So you're talking about filtration, you're talking about reverse osmosis, you're talking about serious water treatment, you're talking about piping that water, in our case 38 kilometres to the largest river in the region, such that becomes a small volume in a bigger river and has negligible impact. Water treatment in our pre-fees, I think is $134 million of investment for the water treatment plants and the pipeline. So obviously it's an area of focus and attention for us, and something that over the last quarter we've done quite a bit of work on, optimizing that, understanding some of the chemical balances, getting more information on the water balance, and optimizing those treatment routes so that we've got the best solution to put in the EIA, into the environmental water permit, and then obviously for the mine going forward.
Okay, and obviously you're a mine builder. You've built a fair few mines throughout your career, but one man can't build a mine on his own.
Absolutely not.
What expertise have you brought in since you've joined, or even predecessors, that understand Finland, understand the regulatory environment, understand how to build a mine in this sort of environment?
Yeah.
What sort of work's been done there?
So one thing I would say, and giving full credit to James and the team that came before me, It was a very nice piece of feedback at the FEM conference. A fairly renowned geochemist named Scott Halley, he got up and he'd done some training for geologists in the region, in and around the conference, and we gave him our geochem data so that he could use it in the training. And I sat in his presentation, and he complimented the team. He said that what we have here is a world-class data set. The way these guys have used their geochem data to understand their deposit is world-class, and that all got started before I started. So the work that's been done to lay those fundamentals has been first class. So big tick there, right? And geochem is obviously very important when it comes to understanding the deposit, understanding the mineralogy, but also understanding what happens with your waste and water as you go through. So big tick in terms of the fundamentals of the team that's there. On the environmental side, again, I would say that the team that was already there, they're working with a group called Enveneer. There's a local Finnish company, have worked with the authorities, very experienced in the methods and the processes. Every time I sit down with those guys, I feel more confident about their advice and the work that we're doing down that permitting line. And then I guess since I've started, the first thing we did, obviously we're getting the PFS out with WSP, who are a world-class outfit. A lot of those people ex-golders that WSP had taken over. World-class outfit especially when it comes to mine waste, water, tailings, etc. And we've continued to work with WSP on some of those optimizations. I brought in a group that I know that have been involved in projects that I've been involved in, called Minescope. We got Minescope to do a pretty kind of thorough review, help us scope out those optimization opportunities. So Minescope have been helping us, plus a suite of other kind of consultants in terms of that waste and water space. And then over in the last quarter, we've appointed a project director to provide that additional exec level support in the team. So Russell White joined us this quarter. Russell's got a background, so he was head of projects with Centamin. Prior to that, head of projects with Toro Gold, so built Mako, was the study director, construction project director, and then the operations manager for Mako. So, has got great mine building experience. Before that, on the engineering side, on some of the Endeavour projects, and Asenco and the like. So incredibly well qualified projects guy to lend that additional support. So building up that capability within the group. Locally, we've put in a couple more people around the environment side. Obviously, that's a lot of the work. So we're building up the capability of the team. Michael Stoner, who kind of joined us a little bit earlier in the year. So we're really increasing the capability to be able to go through these development phases.
Yeah, nice. Okay, all right. Good quality team members there.
Absolutely.
Obviously, like we said, we've been talking about the boring stuff, right? But the exploration isn't over. From what I understand, you are in the process of reevaluating a lot of the data. You're coming out with a new exploration strategy very soon. What are you expecting to come out, or what's the goal in terms of what you want to come out with and show the market?
Yeah, I think one of the things, Rupert, obviously I've come in with the aim is to really move Ikkari through to production and cash flow. But a core part of the DNA of Rupert Resources has been that exploration success and a systematic nature of that. And I think, I think you and I spoke earlier in the year, some of the hits we've had in and around Ikkari in other settings would probably create a lot more excitement. So what do we know? What do we know about the belt? And really, we've used this summer period. There's less available drill sites for us. We've used this summer period to really kind of step back and reevaluate what is our exploration strategy, what is the best allocation of our capital in terms of exploration for the next 3 years, while we're heavily invested in studies and technical work to bring Ikkari to cash flow. So you've got a couple of things, right? We know that the belt is a multi-million ounce belt. As I said before, we know you've got Kittilä, we know we've got Ikkari, we know at Haina Central we've got 150,000 ounces. We got Haina South. We know that there's certainly gold in the system.
Yeah, there's some high grade stuff in there as well.
There's some high grade. We haven't been able to wrap a resource around that, but we know that there's gold. Well, there's gold in the system. So one of the theories, of course, is there's gold in the system. It's got to come from somewhere, and it's about understanding the plumbing of that system. What we know about Ikkari is you've got that contrast between high strain, low strain rock masses. You've got this brecciated zone that's created this beautiful kind of bowl for the fluids to precipitate out, and that's created the ore body that we talked about earlier. So some of it's about looking for the right plumbing. Now, it's not all going to be nice big fat brecciated zones of 2 grams for 10,000 ounces of vertical meter for 250 meters, but there are other multi-million ounce occurrences out there. So do we focus our attention on doing larger, deeper programs close to Ikkari for production that is today is 15 years away? Or do we continue to be systematic and look at our base of till, which has delivered all of that success? Do we look at reserving more ground, turning over some of the ground? One of the things that the team's been good at is looking at something, say, is this economic in the way we would want it to be economic? Yes, no. Yes, we follow it up. No, we drop that ground and move on. So that's really the trade-off we're going now. We're going back over 10 years of data that we've collected in that region. We've got some external expertise in. We've partnered with Verify for their AI platform to see what, the different ways that we can look at the data, use the AI, machine learning, plus the resources that Verify put to that in terms of geochemists, geophysicists, geologists, to help us look at that data and cut that data in multiple ways that once upon a time would have taken us weeks, if not months, to be able to do that quickly. So looking at all of that data, in the next few weeks, we had a workshop 2 weeks ago before the FEM conference. In the next few weeks, we'll be able to bundle that up and kind of show what is our strategy, what are going to be the drill targets for certainly this winter, next winter, and how we plan to allocate that exploration capital. One of the things that I believe Ikkari has done for us is it's shown us being systematic it works, but it's also given us the opportunity. Some of the smaller exploration companies. I feel for those guys in those companies because you kind of got to drill for the next funding round. Whereas we are well funded. We've got a deposit that's going to deliver bundles of cash flow. Maybe we can, once it's in production and we're producing that cash, maybe we can do some of that kind of deeper, higher cost stuff at that stage, and maybe we can be systematic. Our internal target, when we were kind of sitting down and working on our strategy earlier in the year, we're talking about, okay, we've got 4 million ounces. We really like to get to 6. The geologist didn't bat an eyelid. Okay, 7. They weren't as confident as with 6, but they didn't leave the room. So we've kind of set that internal target that by the time Ikkari is in production, we've got another 3 million ounces across the belt. So it's a target. We don't have that today, but by being systematic, we think there's an opportunity.
No, but it makes sense, though, doesn't it? Because obviously you will, in theory, increase value as you de-risk Ikkari, and then if you are finding additional ounces, and I mean, you've just got this multi-pillar of value being created. So you mentioned you're well funded. How much cash is in the bank at the moment?
So end of September, just on 100 million Canadian. So probably this year, the spend has been a little bit lower because really the work streams have been on that waste and water optimization. Still a lot of work going on. Environmental baselines are kind of wrapping up now. So it's about bringing all of that into the EIA report. We want to wrap in some of this optimization work into that. So getting that report done, because that's our first kind of formal feedback then from the authorities, what they see in that report. That'll give us some lead about what things are expecting in the environmental water permit application. So getting that wrapped up. Our drilling's been a little bit less. We've used this summer period doing more data work, getting some well-respected people involved just to peer check what we're doing and make sure that the way we're thinking about things and the way we're thinking about structural geology, geochemistry, etc., are the right things. And I think kind of next year, I think you'll see certainly the study spend as we engage major consultants around the feasibility, etc. You'll see that spend come up a little bit. As I said, we'll exploration strategy be out kind of this quarter, and we'll kind of give people a read of where we're heading.
Nice. Okay, but you've got enough cash in theory to last at least 2 years, maybe a bit more.
Certainly, we've got we've got enough cash to get us through these kind of studies and permitting. I guess what we're starting to think about now, what's the next phase when we are in that phase where we're kind of still waiting for the permits. One of the things Mike Stoner and I have started working on, let's start talking about the funding of early works, for example, so you can bring in some of the timeline in there. Let's talk about the funding of how we're going to do the debt financing, how we can start to get those financiers involved now-ish, such that we're not doing an FS, then doing a bunch
scrambling around looking for things.
Yeah, and then doing a bunch of kind of technical diligence for finances, etc. So we've actually had a lot of inbounds on that, so that gives us confidence. So really starting to build that out as part of our 5-year strategy. So it's keeping those core pillars going in parallel.
Okay. And what are the next? Obviously, you're funded for at least a couple of years. What do these next couple of years look like? Can you give us any time horizons as to when we might be seeing different things?
Sure. So obviously, EIA report is the next big thing.
Yep.
That's kind of pushing out a little bit, but it's worthwhile to get some of this waste and water work kind of buttoned down a bit more. That reduces the risk on the permitting end. So that's the next major bit of work. I think you'll see early in the new year some announcements around, we have awarded some of the major engineering works. One of the things that is in our strategy now is, we're talking to a bunch of potential providers around the engineering, but the thought is to go with someone that has built multiple gold mines. So get them partnering with us, someone that can look and even potentially put some of their balance sheet to work in terms of how we build this thing. So there's some work streams we're working on now. I think early in the new year you'll see some announcements on those things, and that'll really be the indication that the feasibility is starting to hit full stride.
Okay, amazing. Graham, thank you for your time.
Pleasure as always, Peter.